Hi there, Andre here from Peak Motorcycles. In this video I'm going to be looking at this Kodama Composites bash plate for the Honda CRF300 Rally. Now this is actually the final finished version, so if you've seen the other couple of videos I've done on these, I got in touch with Kodama Composites earlier in the year to ask them if they were going to make one for the CRF300 Rally. Because they've made some for the CRF250 Rally which looked rather good, and I was keen to get something similar for my bike. Like a lot of people in the world, they've had some trouble getting hold of a bike. So what they've been kind enough to do is they made their mould initially based upon the bash guard, because they could get hold of a bash guard. And I've gone through a couple of iterations of prototyping with them where they've done the work, they've sent it to me, I've tried to fit it to my bike and see what I need to change just to make it fit right. So what we have here is the final version. So what's a little bit different about their bash guard is that it doesn't bolt directly to the bike. Instead it uses the existing Honda bash guard. And the way it fits in is it really does nestle up against it, and they actually used the original Honda bash guard to make the mould. So I don't know if you can see there, but it's pretty much a perfect fit across the back there. It does extend slightly further back to give a bit more protection. And the piece that matches up is actually this oil filler hole, which is exactly the same shape. I don't know if you can see this at the front end, but it is actually a really, really good fit all the way across. Now my bash guard has had a few knocks and scrapes, so if, depending on the level of damage that you've got on yours, you might have to get a new one. But I'm going to try it with mine, which has been knocked around a fair bit. I did about 500 miles on this using this bash guard and hit a few big rocks, and it still seems to fit really well. Why do I think this is better than the ones that just bolt on? Well, there's a few reasons. So first of all, Honda made this with these rubber pads, so that even though it's just made of plastic, these blocks and the space underneath means that it would actually deform a little bit. And most of the other ones I've seen, they have some foam, but nothing like the rubber like this. So I think there is some sort of impact absorption in the plate already. And secondly, there are these tabs on the side of the Honda stock bash guard, which most of the other racks don't have. And that might seem like a big deal, but these actually fit into the slots in the bottom of the side panels on the fairing. For most of the other bash guards, you can actually push the side piece in a little bit, just because there's nothing to hold it. And by having this on the bottom, you can make sure everything fits together really, really nicely. So that is really everything I want to say about fitting it to the bash guard. Before I go and do it, I'll just give you a close-up look. It's made from a carbon fibre weave together with glass and with Kevlar to give it toughness. I know that the carbon fibre look is not something for everyone. You know what, it's going to be on the underneath of the bike, and it doesn't look that different to me to the black alloy guard I've got on at the moment, or even the plastic that was on there beforehand. So the composition of this, it's actually made from 2 layers of carbon fibre, 1 layer of Kevlar, 1 layer of glass matte weave, and then there is this gel coat, this sort of high gloss finish on the bottom. So these 5 layers get compressed together and you end up with this, and I wouldn't exactly say that it's light, but it certainly feels comparable, if not slightly lighter than the metal equivalents. So that's it really, to show you like this. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through the assembly instructions that Kodama Composites provided and make sure that it all fits up properly onto my plate. So the ones I had before that were the prototypes actually had their bash guard already attached. I'll show you on the workbench when I clamp it. Essentially there are these 4 M6 mounting holes. So what I need to do is to clamp my bash plate to this, lining it up with the line from their moulding along the back there, just to make sure that it's lined up perfectly, that together with a hole as well. I'll clamp that together. There's a couple of ways that you could do this. So one is that you clamp it all up, you then mark the holes, you then drill the holes and you fit everything together. The second option is that you actually drill through the plate itself, so while it's attached. I suppose there is then the risk that you make the holes slightly larger in the outer plate. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to clamp it up first of all, then I'm going to map, and then I'm going to mark on the 2 rear holes. I'm going to drill them, and then I'm going to fit the bolts at the back. And then for the front, I'm going to move my clamps to the front here, just to make sure that it really is as firmly pressed up against the bash guard to the plate as possible. And then I'm going to mark those and then undo everything and drill it then. It does take a bit longer, but at least you don't have to watch me do all of that in real time. But I think it should make sense for getting the best possible fit for the bash guard. So there you go. So the first thing to note is I've got an old pillowcase that I actually put on the bench here, just to stop the bottom from scratching. I know it's going to get scratched by rocks and everything, but you know, at least while I'm clamping it and just getting it ready the first time, I thought it was worth leaving it on there. So the very first way I'm going to clamp it is I'm basically going to put my Honda bash guard in just slide it forwards. I don't know if you can see in here, there's the foam on the sides which is cut perfectly to match, and these bits basically just need to nestle up underneath there. So I'm just going to push that in until that's in, and what I'm actually looking at is to line up the oil filler hole. What that also lines up with is at the back there is a line from the original moulding, which I don't think you can quite see, but it's basically flush up against that. What I'm going to do is, once that's in place at the back, I've just got these quick clamps which I'm going to just put on around there. Just checking that is all still lined up. Also looking at these side pieces to make sure that is lined up both sides. Just going to loosen that off very slightly. There we go. So that's one clamped. So hopefully you can see that on the video. So this has just been clamped. I have these two quick clamps, one either side. That is now very firmly up against that at this end. It's flush on this side and that side. So I'm just going to flip it over. And now on here I can see the two holes that I need to drill. So I'm just going to mark this off for these two. 1, 2. I'm going to take the clamps off. And there I have two holes, my Sharpie in the bottom of my bash plate to drill. Easy as that, just making sure there's no swarf on there. What I don't want to do is to have anything that's on the bottom of this, this plate that could actually hold it off the bottom. One thing I think I should also mention is that you should really clean up your bash plate before you put it on. Mine has been cleaned up. I snuck it into the kitchen and managed to clean it in the sink just to get any mud and dust, especially on any of the contact surfaces, just to make sure it's the best possible fit. I've got my holes drilled. The next thing to do is to just get that fitted at the back there. Now the mounting hardware it comes with, it's got a 10mm nylock nut on the front side, and it's a T30 Torx on the underside. Not that sure about the Torx, mainly because it's the only thing on the Honda CRF that would use a Torx, so it means it's an extra tool to carry. Then again, I don't expect this is going to come off. I think they're going to be fixed and they're going to be there forever, especially with the nylock nut on, so it's not really a problem. I think if you ever did take it off, or if you even had some in the right size, that maybe putting a hex one on that meant that you didn't have to carry an extra tool might be useful, but actually just as it is, and the fact you don't need to do them up that tight, these are absolutely fine. So the way it goes on, screw goes in, the bolt goes in from the bottom through both pieces, a washer goes on, and then the nylock nut on the top. And it's a 10mm socket on that side. They really don't need to be done up tight. It's just enough just to come into contact with the nylon, just to make sure it's going to hold it. If you did it up too tight, I'm guessing that the screw might even, well, probably wouldn't crack it, but it might crack the plastic on the inside. I'm just doing these up just tight enough with my T30 screwdriver. And there we go. Okay then, so hopefully you can see that well enough. So that's just up to the nylock nuts. That's just nicely finished underneath like that with the lugs still to go in. So I'm just going to clamp this front end again, because there is a bit of flex in the plastic plate, so I don't want that to move when I'm marking it up. So exactly the same as before. Just going to turn it over, mark through these holes where I need to drill. I'm going to take these clamps off. Just going to take out this the front piece, the front bolts. I'm just going to drill the two holes where I've marked up, just here and here. Same thing, just clean them off. I don't want to have any extra bits of plastic that I'm clamping between the two layers. Okay, that all looks good. So exactly the same as the back end. I'm just going to push that on from the back. front ones just pop through. There's one on this side. That's just very slightly off. I'm wondering if I clamp that down, that one will go back. That bit of help through. Okay, so that is the bash guard fitted to the Honda bash plate. It certainly feels very snug. If you look at it from the sides, all of that seems to fit nicely in with the original shape. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Yamoto one off the bike. I'm going to weigh them because, hey, that's what some people come here for. And then I'll refit this to the bike. So the next thing I'm going to do is take off my Yamoto bash guard. If you've seen my other videos, I've done this a couple of times already. So I'm just going to skip through this. This is the point I mentioned about the bash guard and the tabs. So because this Yamoto guard doesn't actually have the tabs for the bottom of these panels to fit into, these are actually quite loose to move, and it's only that front panel that's holding it together. There you go, that's the Yamoto bash plate off. The next thing I want to do is just give you a quick comparison side by side. This one is the Kodama Composites one bolted to my original bash guard. This is the Yamoto one that's been on my bike. This one has a few more drain holes. The stock one actually had a lot of drain holes, but as you can see there's still quite a lot of build-up. I guess it's just something to have to keep washing out. I know with the 250 bash guards that Kodama Composites have done, it's never been a problem, so I think that's all fine. The bits I just want to point out is that on the sides of this there is just the pads, these foam pads, so they stop any flex outward and they do protect the sides. What they don't do is it's missing the tabs that would be inside here, so it's these tabs here on the stock one. So the side panels will actually slot onto these, whereas on here there's nothing to stop any inward movement. A couple of things to mention. One is how far back this one goes. So this one does actually stop here, which is actually pretty much in line with the bolts. Whereas on the Kodama Composites one, in line with the bolts is kind of the back of the bash guard, and it extends another inch or so in the middle just to give a bit more protection. Another thing to mention is that on the contact points with the frame itself, the stock guard has these rubber pads on these raised blocks which would deform if required. There's nothing like that on the Kodama Composites one. And I think one of the problems, I suppose, with the metal ones is if they bolt directly to the frame, if there is an impact, it's going to transfer directly onto the frame. And clearly Honda used the finest quality steel when they made the CRF300, because they do that when they're building to a budget. But there's always a chance that actually getting a whack on the bash guard would actually just be transmitted straight through. In the case of this one, I'd like to think that the toughness of the Kodama Composites guard, together with the original part underneath it, would mean that actually if there was an impact, worst case, these will actually snap off. The plastic mounting points will actually come loose and give some more protection to the bike. On top of that, the fact it does have these rubber pads combined with the deformable blocks underneath just makes me think it's just a better way to support the bike. You know, it's not only on the mounting points like this one, it also have these points here. Now I know on the Kodama Composites there was some support here, which I guess relatively would be back in here. On the stock plate there is no protection there, so there's nothing there. With the Kodama Composites one, there is this additional protection. So, you know, overall I do think this is a tougher, better design. But let's see how much they weigh. I know some people hate this, so if you're one of those people, skip ahead to the next bit. Otherwise, I'm just going to weigh these two and compare. Now, they do have slightly different mounting hardware, so the bits that are different I'm going to weigh with the bash guards, just so you can tell. So first up, we have the Kodama Composites, and that one weighs in at 1,418 grams, so 1.418 kilos. The Kodama Composites guard, that weighs in at 1,220 grams, so 1.22 kilos. So it's about 200 grams lighter. Now, I know that underneath the bike, 200 grams doesn't really make that much difference, but for those who are looking to cut down on weight, even saving 200 grams by having this sort of bash plate instead of that sort of bash plate may well be worthwhile. Bearing in mind that this is in addition to the original bash plate, so if you were just to use the stock one, it would be lighter still, but I think most people have actually put a metal one on already. So this is an alternative to the metal one, which is certainly lighter than the Yamoto bash plate, but may also be lighter than some of the others. I haven't tried any of the others yet, so if anyone has weighed one of the other offerings that's out there and would like to share it in the comments, then I'm sure we can draw a comparison about which one is actually the lightest, if that's a thing that matters to people. Right then, that's enough of that. I'm now going to fit this to my bike. So one thing I did notice with putting those rear ones in is that they are a lot easier to locate using the original bolts than it is when you use the Yamoto bolts. Now the tricky bit for this is to make sure I get the side bits in okay. That's one. Put that there just to hold it for a sec. I'll go around and do the other side. The key bit of this is just making sure that the side bodywork actually goes into those tabs that I mentioned earlier. There we go. That's both those are in. Yeah, it's a lot easier to fit than the Yamoto one. I guess that's because it's using the OEM bash guard that was on the bike originally. So that's what Honda have actually designed it for. So there we go. That is how easy that is to put on. Quite impressed with that. So the last thing is just to fit the front guard. Got those holes still lining up well. Yeah, it's this bit now, so there is no inward movement when I compare that to the one that the tabs didn't fit into. So now this bit does actually butt right up against that, and it's on some foam, so it's a really snug fit. Making sure that's in on both sides. That's better. So that is now on the bike. So I'll try and give you a look around so you can see exactly how it fits. So as you can see, it's a pretty good fit all the way along here, all the way along the sides. The gear shift is certainly clear of it. And if I bring that down underneath, hopefully you can see that where the oil fill cap is, oil fill bolt is, and also where there's a bit of a bash guard, and also where there's a bit of coverage just to the back. Now it doesn't cover the rear linkage altogether, but honestly I don't think you'd be able to have a cover for that, because that linkage needs to be able to move up. So all that would happen there would be that the skid plate would just hit whatever would otherwise hit the linkage. Now, unless that was a pivoting guard, but to be honest, I think that's probably more hassle than it's worth. So yeah, I think that looks pretty good. The fit is really good, really solid, and it just went right on as you would expect, as it's using the stock bash guard. So that's it. That's my video on the skid plate from Kodama Composites for the Honda CRF300 Rally. I think it's a really good product. I think the fact that it uses the bash guard that comes with the bike means that it's a perfect fit, and it also means that you're not going to transmit any big shocks straight through to the frame. It is fairly light. It's lighter than the metal alternatives, though obviously not as light as just having the stock one on its own. A couple of things I just wanted to add. So first of all, I haven't been paid to do any work here. I'd initially inquired about a CRF300 Rally bash guard, but they were unable to get hold of a bike to actually do the final fitting. So that was the bit that I did for them and just provided feedback. So they did all the work, producing it, getting it as close as possible based on the bash guard that they had, and then I just gave them some feedback after I tried fitting it to my bike. They did send this one to me as the final one to fit without the Honda guard fitted, so I could essentially test their fitting instructions and make sure that the way it will come to everyone else that gets one will be exactly the same, and to make sure it makes sense and it all goes onto the bike. It was very straightforward to fit, even with all the messing around with the videoing and doing the comparisons and everything else. I think it's probably about a half-hour job. Obviously it helps me having this ABBA stand here because I can lift it up, but I think it would be just as straightforward to do on the side stand, albeit it would be harder to get the camera angles and you'd be on your knees for some of it. I look forward to getting out on the trails and giving it a go. For those of you who ride on rocks, you know, and you get those big thunks of something hitting the underside, you're quite glad you do have a bash guard on the bike. Anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing what this is like once I get out on the trails. So after I've ridden for a while, maybe had a few big knocks, I'll give you a further update. Anyway, I hope this has been interesting and useful. If it has, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.